want to talk a little bit about some of the operative verbs that our adversaries use. That word right there is just simple Quran. That's what it says in Arabic. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what the ideology of a religion, if you will, a theology, that first and foremost, if you don't remember anything else tonight that I tell you, and by the way, I can send you, as I always do, I send you the PowerPoint. You don't have to worry about trying to remember everything. We'll send it to you. And you can walk yourself back through with all the sources and the links and what I call master the subject yourself, if you wish to. And I always talk a little bit about the tendency to become afraid or to become angry. It's the natural inclination of us as people to be either afraid or angry. But we're not authorized according to the Bible to be either. You ever thought about that? So if that's the case, then what do we have left? To respond with wisdom, knowledge, and understanding in the Spirit of the Lord. The only way we can overcome the natural tendency to be angry or fearful is to be Spirit-filled. Because it's contrary to the nature, but the wrath of man does not accomplish the righteousness of God. Nothing that we do, even the best possible motive, quote unquote, or good project that we might be involved with, if we do it out of the motivation of anger, it will not sustain into eternity. It'll evaporate. Wood, hay, and stubble. However, we're facing an ideology, a theology that is explicitly motivated by anger. Vindictiveness, vengeance, and revenge. The complete, exact opposite. And I almost forgot the starting point of this premise is that Islam teaches that the crucifixion never happened. But it's not just a passive statement. In other words, they don't allow you to, it's not that they just say it didn't happen. You are accused of blasphemy if you insist that it did happen. So it's not just a passive statement. In other words, we don't think it really happened, but you're free to believe that if you want to. No, it's another dimension deeper. Not only do we emphatically insist that it didn't happen, you are not allowed to believe that it happened. And if you do, what will happen to you is what you're seeing in the Middle East today, which remarkably seems to be pretty low on the radar, doesn't it, in terms of what do you think's going to happen if, or let me start over, are we exempt from that? We have been essentially so far, haven't we? But are we ultimately? So that's what this is going to be about a little bit. There we go. This is the center of the theological and social political universe of Islam. Inside of that is the Kaaba. It's a stone that they believe fell from heaven. It's actually a meteorite. It's been in existence for at least 1,400 years, if not longer, because it was there when Muhammad came on the scene 1,400 years ago. And what are these people doing? They're walking around it. And what are they doing? They're casting away their sins. I mean, just objectively, is there anything in the Bible that commands us to walk around a stone enshrined in a... Kaaba means square. So this is part of the Hajj that you hear about. Oops, went out of it. Let's see. Okay. Now, as I said, it's the center of the theological universe. It's like the center of an atom. The entire Islamic world rotates around this nucleus of the Hajj. In Saudi Arabia, the keeper of the two holy places and the largest supporter of what they call dawah, promotion of Islam, what we call terrorism in the world. One person's moderate or one person's patriot is another person's terrorist. And we can't even come to terms with what these words mean, in the West versus in the Islamic world. What they call a freedom fighter is what we call a terrorist. So this is just a little list of the different words we're going to cover today. And the one you probably recognize the most is that one right there. We hear a lot about that. This one here occurs 40 times in the Quran. This word right here, expel, drive out, or displace, kharaj, occurs 4 times more than the word jihad. And this other word here, qatl, means slaughter or kill, also occurs 4 times more frequently in the Quran than the verb jihad. All these years we've been arguing like squirrels in a cage over the subtle meanings of the word jihad, when in fact these two verbs, as you'll see, we'll go over it a little bit more, kharaj and qatl, are magnitudes more violent than the verb jihad. Magnitudes more violent, because this one means to displace or drive out violently, to push you violently off, like being something slamming into you and pushing you off the road. When you hear about driving the Jews into the sea, you've heard that phrase before? This is the verb they're talking about, to displace them, to push them away, shove them away violently. And this one here is even worse. It means to slaughter. It actually means to grotesquely obliterate, to stomp you into the ground like a snail run over by a tank. They are very violent verbs. I asked a Coptic Christian one time when I used to work in passport processing, when people come from overseas, from Egypt, I asked him, tell me, what does this verb mean? Because there's a verb, iteration of this root verb, it's called faqtuluhum. It's not a cuss word, but it sounds like one. But I asked him, what does that mean? Tell me, Muhammad, what is that word? He says, very nasty word. Very nasty word. It's so nasty because it's violent. The obscenity of the verb is that it's so violent. It's beyond anything that we can imagine in our culture, except for just stomping a bug, crushing the life out of something. And if you think that I'm exaggerating, take the PowerPoint and go ahead and look them all up, and you'll find that, if anything, I'm understating. So here we'll look at the first one, jihad, striving for the cause of Allah. The verb is often there's various ways that they translate it in English, because these are what I call industrial strength verbs, or like ramen noodles, just add water, poof. There's a lot of different adjectives compressed into the meanings of these verbs. They have probably been teased apart and studied more than any other document in the history of the world except for one, which would be the Bible itself. Because these words are supposedly from heaven as they were spoken by Allah, pre-existing. There's no alteration allowed, and you have to take them exactly as they are written. So the Muslims are advised to fight hard against who? Every time you hear the argument, what do they always try to say about jihad? That it's a peaceful interior thing, striving for your own betterment. While explicitly right in the Quran it says just the opposite, that it's a violent battle against the disbelievers and the hypocrites. The hypocrites are Muslims. How many times have you heard President Obama say, oh, they kill more Muslims than they do non-Muslims? The reason why is because they consider them this, munafiqina, hypocrites. And they have the death sentence on them just as much as these people, the unbelievers. And be what toward them? Contrast that with John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, should not be couraged, jihaded, kufared, and all the rest, but they should have life. It's as opposite as you can possibly get. And where is their refuge? Hell, and wretched is their destination. Not much hope. Remember in the passage in the gospel when it says, then they will kill you, and they say that they're doing God a service? This is that. These people will kill us and insist that they're doing God a service. Does what I'm saying to you now seem exaggerated, overstated? Does it seem like it meshes in with what you're seeing on the news pretty much every night? This is the Hadith, the Sirah, and the Quran. These three major components of what is called Sharia law, overall Islamic theology, you will see, depending on how you want to divide it up, there's somewhere around 30 to 50% of the entire Quran, Hadith, and Sirah that are essentially devoted to jihad. Wow. Keeping in mind now that verb only occurs 40 times in the Quran. Those other two verbs that I will get to occur 4 times more often, and their magnitude's more violent. See what I mean about putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable? That's what we've been doing. We haven't even barely touched the true nature of the adversary that we face. Remember why I said don't be afraid and don't be angry? Now you're starting to understand, right? Why would you be angry? Because we've been deliberately misinformed. That should make you angry. But not in the way of nature. How are you supposed to respond to something like that? In times past, God winked at this ignorance, but now commands men everywhere to repent. Don't take it wrong. I'm not calling you ignorant or that you need to repent. What I'm saying is, it's not an excuse. Ignorance is like a paper cup full of water. What will eventually happen to that paper cup full of water? It will soften the paper and you'll lose it all. That's how dependable the defense of ignorance is. Remember the passages about cisterns that hold no water? That's what it's talking about. The Lord tried over and over and over and over again to show the people the Babylonians are right on the next hill. Get ready, they're coming. Nah, they're not coming. In fact, you prophets, you whistleblowers, you watchmen on the wall, we're going to lock all of you up. We're sick of you. Just leave us alone so we can enjoy our lives. Stop being warmongers and trying to scare the little kids by telling them these horrible stories about the Babylonians coming over the next hill. Here's the next word. I talked about this one a little bit. This one here, to slaughter and kill him. And that's what that says right there. Wa, the first little letter is wa, faqtuluhum. And kill them wherever you overtake them. What does that imply? Wherever you overtake them. What do you have to do to catch up with somebody that's 20 minutes ahead of you down I-75? You got to go high speed after them, don't you? You got to be focused, deliberate, and intentional. This isn't accidental. This is purposeful. Wherever you overtake them and expel them, there's the courage word. I'm just not emphasizing it. Wherever they have expelled you for fitna is worse than slaughter. This one's going to really mess with your head. Fitna is worse than slaughter. What does that mean? Would somebody like to try to tell me? I'll say what fitna is opposition to Islam. This. So what does that mean? Fitna is worse than slaughter. It means that opposition to Islam is a greater crime than them killing us. It takes a minute to wrap your head around that, because it's counterintuitive to the way we look at things in the world, because we value the life of every individual. Our solution to problems is to not kill people. just so we don't have to deal with them anymore. Fitna is worse than slaughter. You could say unbelief if you want to, because sometimes they translate it that way, is worse than being killed. The crime of unbelief is a greater crime than them murdering you for it. And that is why you see this wholesale killing of people in the Middle East, because fitna is worse than slaughter. You guys doing okay?
Yeah.
Hanging in there?
Yeah.
Is it making sense?
Yeah.
It kind of brings things into a clearer focus, doesn't it, in terms of what you see on the news. And then you see our leaders stand up and say, Islam is a religion of peace, and these does not represent the true beliefs of Islam. Who do you suppose is actually correct? This or them? And how do you think the people in the Middle East look at our leaders who insist on standing up in front of us and misinforming us about the most basic principles of their belief? They think we're stupid as a bunch of dumb clucks. Do not fight them until they fight you, but if they fight you, then kill them. Such is the recompense of the disbelievers. What do you think Osama bin Laden did? Exactly that. He was offended because the Americans in the West were in the land of Saudi Arabia, and that was a catalyst to employ this operative verb. Let me talk about this, my concept of the catalyst. You have a big flask, like in the chemistry lab, you know, with Peabody and Sherman, bubbling things, big old thing, nasty green gas inside this large jar, and sitting in the middle of that cloud of green gas is a blob of soft metal called sodium. It looks kind of like butter, just sitting there. And what will happen with those two elements, chlorine and sodium, when they're in a container? Nothing, because they're elements. They don't react. They need a catalyst. So in this case, with chlorine and sodium, the catalyst is water, amazingly enough. When you drop water, in this case, the water doesn't put out the fire, it starts a fire. It creates an exothermic reaction, kabumo. And there's a product formed from it. It's called, somebody? Salt. The thing that we need for life is created by an exothermic reaction of a poisonous green gas and a soft butter-like metal. Nothing at all like the original nature. Only God could do something like that, couldn't he? So, this is one of the elements. The fitna, the opposition, is the catalyst. When you combine this verb and that verb together with fitna, you have a big giant reaction. Which is, what are we seeing in the world today? A big giant reaction. Because these operative verbs are being catalyzed by the presence of the West, i.e. the opposition to Islam. Stop, no more. That's right there is the catalyst. And now they go from passive infiltration to overt violent warfare. And that's why you always see this gradation of events that now we're starting to see glimmers of here in North America. From the semi-invisible to hardly ever occurs to all of a sudden you see things like what happened in San Bernardino. Which then again, our leaders stand up in front of us and tell them, don't worry, it doesn't have anything to do with Islam at all. Is that true? One of the two is not. This is either not true or the narrative is not true. Which one are we going to choose? Which is the safer one to err on? I'd err on this side. I take this at face value. Now can you imagine what it must have been like to be an active duty federal counterterrorism specialist inside the government to encounter the power of a narrative like this? That's why I'm always talking about integrity, because they would come after you. They had to discredit me. If they were able to discredit me, then they could have discredited everything that I said, including talks like this. I wouldn't be standing up in front of you, because you would read in the news that I had been charged with something, embezzling, chasing women, drinking too much, doing drugs, you name it. One of those common things that younger guys often get in trouble for. And I wouldn't be standing here talking to you, because I would have been discredited. Right? You wouldn't come and listen to me, would you? If the caveat to my story was that he was indicted for X something something, right? But I wasn't. And now it's too late. Why? Because they can't go back and change history. And the history is over there in that little box right there, the books. My friend today, who was a supervisor in one of the major dramas of the whole story, when they deleted the records related to the San Bernardino shootings, called me, well, he actually called me the morning after Megyn Kelly, which was December 10th of 2015, right after San Bernardino, and he says, "Haney, are those the 67 records?" Yeah, they are. You mean the 67 records from the ones that they deleted in our case? Yeah, they are. Oh my God, all I can think about now is the families of those people that were killed. This is a hardcore kid, a kick the door down, throw him on the ground, handcuff him, you know, Iraq war veteran, street cop kind of guy, and it changed his life. I said, how does it feel to have destiny come right up to you, stare you straight in the eye, and ask you, what are you going to do now? And have done the right thing. He said, it makes me feel really good, and it makes me feel really mad. Now he's going to stand there like a immovable rock, like Morro Rock out there in California, if and when the time ever does come that the tsunami of accountability comes sweeping across this administration. Somebody will eventually have to answer for what happened, but it won't be him, because he did the right thing. He would not remove the records. So they superseded our procedures, and they went into the system and they deleted them. They obliterated them, just like these verbs. Because to them, Islamophobia, which is like fitna, opposition to the political narrative, is worse than the attacks that happen in our country. It's like a formula: fear of Islamophobia, fear of political correctness, space, fear of jihad, fear of attack. And in a mathematical formula, what's in the middle? Either an equal sign, a greater sign, or a lesser than sign. Which one is there now? Fear of political correctness, being called an Islamophobe, is what than jihad? Greater than. My job, and guys like me, and you in this room actually, if you want to participate in what I'm calling a grassroots campaign, is to change that equation. So how are we going to do it? I'll tell you about that in a minute, once we get through. Don't let me forget though, okay? This is a free-form talk. I'm going off the slides, but every talk I do is always different. I don't have a canned talk, because I try to respond to the time and the moment and the group of people that were gathered together, and listen to the Lord while I'm trying to talk about factual information. And like a river, follow the course down as gravity pulls the river down to the ocean. How far are we from the ocean right now if the river allegorically is a prophetic river? Where are we, do you suppose? I say we're down by Mobile somewhere, wouldn't you? About to go into the great blue ocean. This verse, by the way, 2:191, is the basis for virtually every single fatwa that you hear, a declaration of jihad against America, because all the components of the global Islamic movement are compressed into this one verse, which is that the deen, the religion of Allah, will prevail in the earth. Islam is really a religion of peace, by the way. Comma, pause for effect. Just not right now. That there's always an exception clause in Islam that they never tell you. And the exception clause is, Islam is a religion of peace, just not right now. They don't tell you that part. It will be when Sharia law is established around the whole world. Is America an exception? Is North America an exception? No? Okay, here's the other one. This is the other one of those elements in the Petri dish. This is to push away. Kill them wherever you are taken, and expel them, drive them out from where they expelled you. By the way, these words they're recurring in the same passage. Talk about kill, 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 push, 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 all in the same verse. Expel them, drive them out. That is the motivating factor of ISIS. That's the motivating factor of Hamas. That's the motivating factor of Boko Haram and Taliban. All of them are exactly the same strategy. There is no difference between any of the groups. What is different, complicated, and kaleidoscopic are the tactics. Just for what is your goal going to be when we're done tonight? Simple. What is your goal going to be? Go home. That's it. Yeah. See, this stuff is so simple, it's complicated. Your goal is to go home. Okay? That's your strategy.
Go home.
Go home. That's also yours. It's every one of us. But what is different about it are the tactics. The tactics. How will you do it? And if this was Groundhog Day and we did this over and over and over every single day, even with Groundhog Day, there wouldn't be a single day that when you left here in your car, that you would go home exactly the same way every single time and arrive at the front door at exactly the precise second every single time, because there are too many variables. That's tactics. The fact that we don't even understand the distinction between strategy and tactics is why, in my opinion, we're not prevailing in this conflict. We don't understand the difference between fighting a war strategically versus tactically. Because if you fight a war tactically, they change like a kaleidoscope. By the time you aim in on the target for those shooters, the target's already moved. You never get a beat on the target. But what if I know where you live? Then what will I do? I'll just send one of my guys to your house and wait for you to show up. It's a lot simpler way to fight a war, isn't it? If I know what your intention is, I just set somebody prepared to intercept you when you get home. We don't do that. And what is our defense? Constitution. We can talk about this without even talking about warfare, not even getting into spiritual warfare. What is our defense? The Constitution. Why? Because this is not a First Amendment issue. It's not a freedom of speech issue. It's an Article 6 issue. Article 6 says that the Constitution will be the supreme law of the land. Very simple. Article 6 is one of the shortest articles in the whole Constitution. But our country has never been challenged on that basis in the whole history. There are virtually no legal precedents in court for a direct, overt challenge to Article 6. It was unimaginable that it would ever happen. Well, not completely unimaginable, because the Founding Fathers built these provisions into the Constitution. However, have you ever heard anybody address this threat from an Article 6 orientation? No. They always talk about freedom of religion. But freedom of religion doesn't give you the freedom to do this and to try to overthrow the constitutional republic that we live in and supplement it with Sharia law, which they're doing, whether they say so or not in public, because this is one thing you can try to take a note on. Look up the organization called the Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America, AMJA, Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America. Doesn't sound too bad, does it? sort of not too threatening. How about Majama Fukaha Sharia Bi'amrikia? Did you hear a word in there?
Yeah.
Majama Fukaha Sharia Bi'amrikia, the group of lawyers promoting Sharia in America. Wait a minute, that's not freedom of speech. That's Article 6. That's the most dangerous of all the Muslim Brotherhood front groups in the United States, but most people have never heard of it, and it's on purpose. It's not only is it a North American organization, it's a global organization. Every couple years they have a thing called Ijtima, where they go and they all sit around a big table and they talk about, okay, what are some of the challenges that the Muslim community is meeting in North America? Should they work for the government? Should they join the military? Should they be part of the police? Can men have 4 wives? And so on. Okay, we're going to come up with a fatwa, an explanation to the public, to the Muslim community in America on how to deal with whether they should work for the government or not. That's AMJA. Okay, everybody in the global community, everybody agree? Good. Good to go. When we go back, we will publish the fatwa for the community in North America, and they will abide by it. If you don't believe me on that, just go to their website and look up what they just posted on marriage law. The stuff is as real as it gets. And the fact that we don't know it is deliberate. We're in a different era now. We're facing a different threat. It's the threat that says that Christ was never crucified, and that if you believe that, we will kill you for it. Are you willing to stand up for what you believe? Now's the time. I'm not being melodramatic. It's not theoretical. My adversaries in the government overplayed their hand. I know what they're capable of doing because I saw them do it. You think about it. What happened within the administration is they brought these people like Ben Rhodes, that's been in the news a lot lately. Anybody been following that? An overt liar and deceiver. A master at it. Good at it. Like a magician, really good at what he does and pulling tricks on people. They bring him, guys like him into the administration and they give them assignments. The first stronghold, the first place of protection they went after were the law enforcement agencies within the federal government. The FBI, the CIA, the CBP, guys like me. Why? Can somebody tell me why they would go after them first? Disarm law enforcement. Then there's nobody standing in their way. So who was among the very first in that small circle of federal law enforcement that the administration went after first? Me. Because I was contradicting the narrative by having pesky PowerPoints like this. Contradicting the narrative that Islam is a religion of peace. Mr. Haney, you're reckless. Mr. Haney, that's impossible. Mr. Haney, that's really scary. Well, I can understand if a regular, everyday person says that, but not one that's 2 or 3 grades higher than me. You don't have the permission to tell me that this is really scary when you're standing there with the H&K P2040 caliber on your side. You're supposed to be standing up for the country, not telling me that it's scary. You okay, hon?
Yeah.
So then after that, they went from the federal law enforcement circle to the national, meaning state, meaning premier organizations like the New York Police Department, and disarmed them. And then they morphed that into what you see now with the border problem. Once they disarmed the law enforcement officers and ICE and Border Patrol and CBP and cops on state level, it wouldn't have mattered if we had a wall 90 foot high around the country. There's nobody watching the gate because they told all of us, put your hands behind your back, we're going to handcuff you. You cannot make cases based on affiliation with religious groups, parentheses Islam. Otherwise we will come after you, which they did. And they weren't kidding about it. Fitna. We talked about fitna. Fitna is one of those ramen noodle words. It's got all kinds of adjectives. You just add water and poof. But I say this is what fitna is, opposition to the advance of Islam. And you know what that we who are not Muslims have to do to make them offended, to defend Islamic world? It's called breathing. That's what we have to do. That's all we have to do, is breathe. And we're an offense to them. You guys really do need to look into this ideology that motivates the people in the Islamic world.
How does a Muslim become a hypocrite?
By not following Sharia.
And question.
Mm-hmm.
The recent events of the Department of Justice turning over the mastermind of the Benghazi attack. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, and they've already excluded the death sentence from this
Exactly.
trial.
Exactly.
With,
What are your thoughts
on what
on
basis? Who's making these decisions?
Exactly. What are your thoughts on that?
It took him, what, 4 years? 3 or 4 years? When he was walking up and down the main streets in Benghazi
Yeah.
to finally apprehend him. And then when they finally did, the first thing they did is basically extend him constitutional civil rights and civil liberties and tell him, we're not going to seek the death penalty.
Do you think that has to do with some of the things going on with our political system, a lot of the inputs that you're talking about?
Well,
from the Muslim community?
when they were talking about Tashfeen Malik in the San Bernardino, the woman who was married to Syed Farouk, they said in public, on Fox and CNN, the reason that we didn't query her social media, does anybody remember?
Yes.
What was it?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Apple.
I'll remember.
It said they didn't query her social media because they were afraid of violating her civil rights and civil liberties. This is a foreign national.
She says she's not even a U.S. citizen.
The daughter of a Pakistani businessman who is living in Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, Syed Farouk is a hafiz. Anybody know what a hafiz is? The guy that memorizes the Quran. Now, if you're certified as having memorized the entire Quran, is that something you can get from the University of Phoenix? No. You do it through the Shura Council, the community within your mosque that you go to, the imam and the families and the whole community. They certify you, which means what? If I could stand here and verbatim quote from in the beginning, the Lord created the heavens and the earth, all the way, let it be so, Lord, even so come quickly. Every single word, including numbers and all of it. What would you think?
Man.
Yeah, I'd be a person of notoriety and prestige. Syed Farouk was a hafiz. That's why I was able to marry the daughter of a rich man, Tashfeen Malik. He wasn't just an average guy. And when his imam said to the American public, I didn't know him, he was lying. Broad-faced lying, right? And we swallowed it. We took it because we don't know the difference between our right hand and our left hand when it comes to this kind of issue. He lied to us. And he did, and he was able to, he did it. Syed Farouk was a person of prestige and notoriety. He was a great catch for the daughter of that wealthy man. In other words, a good, pious young man, be a great husband. By the way, he was planning attacks with Enrique Marquez before he ever met Tashfeen Malik. Because that's what Enrique Marquez is in jail for right now. Plotting attacks with Syed Farouk that were unsuccessful. And what would be the natural question for that? FBI?
Yeah.
If you know there's plots with plural, how long was it going on? How many were there? Who else was involved? Why didn't you stop him? Right?
Yeah.
These are the questions that are sitting there like apples on a tree, waiting for somebody to grab. But we don't, except for a few people. And what happens if you see something and say something? Read the book. That's what happens.
Excuse me, but don't you think most of them must be Muslim?
Who?
Ben Rose and all those people that are lying.
No, but I think the progressive leftists have the same worldview, that they are perfectly comfortable with lying if that's what's necessary to accomplish their political goal. No problem whatever. Look how many times they've done it.
Yeah.
The guy that did the health care parading up and down the stage bragging about how stupid people were. And now we have Ben Rose, the architect of the Iran deal, who did exactly the same thing. These people were drawn into the administration like iron to a magnet. They were sought after, and then they were cultivated and encouraged to do it. Haram means forbidden. I'm just going to walk through because, like I said, if you like, we can send you the PowerPoint. Hijra means to immigrate. There's a mosque in Washington, D.C. called Dar al-Hijra, House of Immigration. But most people don't realize that if you immigrate in the name of Allah, fi sabil Allah, you receive the same reward in heaven as the mujahideen, the guys with the guns. The muhajirun receive the same reward as the muhajideen, the fighters. That means they're coming, when they immigrate, with a deliberate and intentional purpose in mind. It's not accidental, and they're not coming here to learn to like hot dogs and watermelon. There's a reason why they're doing it. Because they know, they're assured in their heart, mind, and soul that their reward for coming here or anywhere that's not a Muslim country is the same reward in heaven as the guys with the guns. This is part of jihad. Just a different kind. Another tactic. Kufar. There's really no way to translate into English what this word actually means, at least in terms of the emotional impact of it, unless I let loose with a bunch of obscenities. You just take the most concentrated word, the words that people say to one another when they're the most possibly angry that you can imagine. That's the content emotionally of this word in Arabic when they call us that.
Sir, can I ask you a question? The citation in the bottom right-hand corner, is that chapter and verse?
Yeah.
So these are actually surahs that we're reading?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just pulled them right out on purpose, just so when somebody asked me that question, which I used to get a lot,
Yeah.
Haney, you're exaggerating.
Yeah.
All right, you go look up, read 226. In fact, there it is right there. Have fun. That's good. Yeah. So I link everything. My little dots and lines and everything means something. That's it in Arabic. That's it in English. To scheme or to plot. And they, the disbelievers, that's us, scheme and plotted. That's how we see everything. They see everything that we do, including Iran deal, Middle East peace deals. We're scheming and plotting for our own advantage, but Allah also planned, and He is the best of schemers. Allah's nature is to deceive and mislead people. So why would they not think that it was all right to do it? That's why the Imam could stand up in front of the cameras and say, I didn't know him, when he's the one that certified the guy as a Hafiz. And not only that, he also forgot to mention that his brother is the Imam of the same masjid in San Diego that Anwar al-Awlaki was before he assumed room temperature. Rabat, a stronghold. You have believed, preserve, endure, remain constant, strong, and fear Allah that you may be successful. Rabat. But what is there a capital of a country in the world called Rabat? It's Morocco. Rabat, Morocco. Rabat means stronghold. It's a masjid. It's a mosque. A mosque is a stronghold for the success of the Muslim community. They are both offensive and defensive strongholds. That's why they put the tower up, so you can see them from pretty far down the road. That's why that one in Washington, D.C., which is, I believe, now the largest mosque in the United States, inaugurated by the Prime Minister of Turkey, is a gigantic existential middle finger, because they're telling us we're right here. We set up our Rabat right in your capital city. Salafa, you heard the word Salafi Muslim. That's not radical. It means original. If we went back and we let's say we bought an apartment complex and we all, pooled our resources, bought the apartment complex and shared and lived together communally or semi-communally, would that be radical? Isn't there a model for that in the Book of Acts? All they that believed that sold their lands and their goods and had all things in common, and gathered together and broke their bread in gladness, meeting in the temple and in houses daily, and the Lord added to them such as should be saved. Those were Salafi. These were people that were original. That's what are Salafi. And next time you heard that word, it's not radical. It means go back to the original. Spirit-filled believers, that's Salafi in a positive application. Is that radical? Well, I guess it depends on how you want to define it, but it's not really supposed to be. And here's a great one, Taqiyya. Some of you might have heard of this one, deliberate deception. They are justified to lie to us if they are in fear of opposition or persecution, like the Imam. The reason why he lied so reflexively, because he was in fear from them as a precaution. So it's a really great system. Every opportunity for the basis qualities of humankind are embedded into the theology. It allows you to kill people if you're angry. It allows you to lie if you're afraid, all for the sake of protecting, supposedly, the religion of Allah. And here's one. If anybody ever tells you that the word terrify or terrorist is not in the Quran, they're lying to you. Because it says, you prepare by steeds of war that you may terrify the enemy of Allah. And your enemy, that's your personal one, by the way. In other words, you don't even know who they are. And that's again why they can kill large numbers of people, because they say that. Oh well, there were probably, besides them, others that were in that group, so we're good, we're covered. Terhubina, that means to terrify. So the word terrorist is in the Quran. You will hear that now that I've mentioned it. In some news release they will say that. Islam is a religion of peace. Terrorism is not in the Quran. It's not true. And I think that's it as far as the slides go. How about questions?
I have a mic here, so for anyone who would like to ask a question so that we can record it. Here we go.
Some people say that Obama is a Muslim and some say he's not. What do you think?
My wife's over there smiling because she's heard this like a bunch of times. And she knows what I'm going to answer. I have a great answer for it. It's a classic biblical question to answer a question. Remember Godfather Part 3? And Robert Duvall, lawyer, Tom, he played the lawyer for the Corleone family. And Marco Corleone calls him into the office, says, Tom, we're going to be starting a new project. You know, something, whatever it was, in Las Vegas maybe, I forget. But you can't be part of it directly. And you remember why? Because you're not part of the family. The question is, was Tom a member of the mafia? Technically. Did it really matter? Technically, no. Because what did Tom do all those years? He helped them achieve their strategic goals through advising them on the best tactics to use to achieve their strategic goal. So does it really matter? Has he helped them? Does it matter exactly if he's technically is or isn't? It's a safe way of answering because I'm in the public arena, and the last thing I need is to be attacked for accusing Obama of being a Muslim when I can't prove it. I wouldn't have survived being a whistleblower and being investigated 9 times if I had made those kind of what would you call it, abstract, subjective, non-provable statements. So I don't. I think up questions to answer questions, and I'll let people come to their own conclusion. I mean, you read, it's exactly the same answer as should we pay taxes to Caesar. What was the answer? Render unto Caesar what is Caesar, and unto God what is God's. Did he answer the question? Yes and no, because it's a paradox.
What's the perceived goal when they go to heaven?
Perceived goal?
Perceived goal. What do they think they're going to receive?
Party till it's like it's 1999.
What was that now?
Party till it's like it's 1999. That's Prince. That was one of his famous songs.
What was the nature of the documents that got deleted?
The nature of the document was what we call biometrics: names, birthdays, passports, addresses, family names, the very core key stuff that any law enforcement agency needs to do to build a case. Why do you give your ID to the bank when you're going to cash a check?
Verify who I am.
Exactly. What if that information doesn't exist? If you're a criminal, it's great, right? But if you're not, it's not so great. So if you're a policeman and you're trying to develop a case on a network of people and there's no substantive biometric information in there, you have a pretty hard time figuring out who they are, which, by the way, leads us right to the door of the problem we're having now with the immigration problem. We don't know who these people are because there are no biometrics on them. So what they did, as I told you, Intercorp, Ben Rhodes, and people like that go after the law enforcement officers in the federal agencies first, disarm them. Then go after the state law enforcement officers, disarm them. And when they took records, when they removed the records that I'd put in, it's only a precursor, a harbinger of what they did on a macro global level. When they showed their disdain for that kind of information at that level, what they were doing, just in the same way as they've refused to protect the border. The fact that we don't secure our border is a blind spot in our worldview that has echoed its way through every other domestic and foreign policy that we have. What will happen if you drive with a blind spot in your mirror and just insist that it doesn't exist? What will inevitably happen to you? You're going to careen into somebody, right? And if you survive it, you'll be lucky. Well, we have blind spots in our immigration policy deliberately, and the precursor of it started with guys like me where they took this information out. Once they got away with doing that, they're wide open.
I guess I'm probably stating what is maybe so obvious to everybody else here, but not to me, is I don't get why they would do that. Like, I don't understand what the objective of that is. What's the purpose of that?
They feel that the civil rights and civil liberties supersede law. That the good that they're doing of bringing these people in is higher, that fitna is greater than the harm that it causes. The crime of not acknowledging their civil rights and civil liberties is a much greater crime than any subsequent damage that might occur. That's their worldview.
How can we stop them? What suggestions would you have for our government or for us as people?
I know I don't want it to sound self-serving. That's the reason why I went through the trouble of writing the book. Either get it, read it, put a review if you like it, send it out to your friends, start talking, find something in the story you can grab, because there's going to be something for everybody to grab a hold of. And then number 4, call your congressman, both state and national, and tell them that's enough. It's time for you to do something about this. And you might not know it. You might think it takes thousands. It doesn't. You know how many it takes for a congressman's office to start noticing a trend? That many. 10 calls.
Can they do something about that?
Yes, they could do it, but they could take the handcuffs off of law enforcement, so to speak, and let us simply do our jobs. You ask anybody in Border Patrol or ICE or CBP or FBI, and they will all tell you, if they're able to do it without somebody looking over their shoulder, they will tell you exactly the same thing. The story is exactly the same across all the agencies. They're not able to do their job. They're told, let people go, let people in. You know, some variation of that theme. It is a common story. It would not be hard for any of you to find lists that long on Google or Yahoo of similar kinds of stories. My story is not unique in one respect. What's unique about it is I was a founding member. I was there from the very first day. And the other unique thing is I had a lot of experience already in the Middle East, and the third unique thing is that I'm a nerd. And I keep track of everything. And you'll see in the back of the book there's about 6 or 7 copies of letters that I got, that are, some of them are so preposterous that you wouldn't, when you read the transcript of what I wrote in the book, you're going to think that you're going to be tempted to think I made it up. That's why I put the letters in the back, because I call it the rubber band theory. You have to stretch your rubber band of your mind way out here past your normal limit to accept it. But what's your natural inclination to do? Let it go. Comes back to its resting state of normalcy. It takes a lot more energy and courage to leave that thing out there and accept that that things really are, you know, this way. But then you have to respond to it. So those are 4 easy things. Find a way to get involved in the story. Tell other people. Post a review on Amazon. Because if we can push the book to #1, what will happen? It generates its own kind of momentum, and it goes nationwide. I'm calling it the Nationwide Grassroots Campaign. Everybody can be part of it. If you ever wondered that question, gee, what can I do? Now you know. There's something you can do.
Yeah,
It's a grassroots movement. I want to do it.
Phil, let me make just a quick statement on that. If for you all don't know Philip, I've known Philip for a long time. And what he's saying is he's not here to promote his book. He's here to save our nation. If you know what he went through and how this has all happened, you would understand that it's not about trying to make a fortune or promoting a book. If you know how the guy lives and who he is, you'll know that that's not his issue.
No.
He is really saying that we've got to get attention on this situation. And it has to happen immediately because elections and different things are coming up.
We
And
have
this
6 months.
has to get out there.
Now, I'm more than 50% optimistic that things are going to go the way we hope they will. But that's not the time to rest easy. Now's the time to engage. And the whole argument we're having about whether we should vote or how we should vote is really simple. This is a constitutional republic, not a church board. Vote for the person who you feel is most likely to stand up and defend the Constitution.
Amen.
That's the country that we live in. This argument about biblical values is important but secondary because we don't live in a government like a church board. It's a constitutional republic. That's where we found ourselves living our lives in this country in this time. Use wisdom, redeem the time. Remember what I said about ignorance. These arguments that we keep hearing, oh, I'm not going to vote for Trump because, you know, he's a heathen. Well, then what are you saying? either you're not going to vote at all or you're going to let Clinton come in. Do you think between the two, which of the two candidates is more likely to stand up and defend the values of the Constitution? It's easy on that basis, isn't it? Uh-huh. And then may God give us the grace to have the wherewithal to recover ourselves. Because if we don't, what do you suppose is going to happen? You're going to see some of that in living color, right in your own neighborhood.
So my question is, scripturally, how are we as Christians supposed to respond and combat what the terrorists are doing and the enemies that are coming against us?
Helmet of salvation. Breastplate of shield.
So,
What do you think we're given this stuff for? For fun? This is spiritual warfare, graduate PhD level here we're talking about. The battle is all around us. What are we equipped for? You have to become wise as serpent and harmless as doves. The way you're going to understand this is, first of all, start to gain a mastery of the subject. Can you develop a set of apologetics that will disarm that from a scriptural perspective? If you can, wonderful, start doing it. If you can't, wonderful, start doing it. Because that's the answer to your question. This is a spiritual warfare. You should be able to walk literally, encounter somebody who is thoroughly convinced that that's the correct worldview and disarm them. Can you do it? That's really the question. And that's the answer to your question. How will you disarm the adversary? By the Word of God. Applied through your life and the gifts that you have and the people that you encounter. That's the answer. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What is the difference now versus when you were employed, with you being able to open up with information, and why weren't others doing the same after they got out of the government or something like that?
Yeah, why you, Philip? Versus somebody else.
Because God called us to do it.
Yeah. Yes.
There are a lot of people that were involved. This is a stage right here. There's a whole kaleidoscope of people. This went on for 13 to 15 years. A whole huge kaleidoscope of people came on and off the stage over the years, and I basically stood in the same place the whole time. And every day was a different cast of characters, or every week, or every month. And there were a few, like James, Steve, you, that I encountered starting around 2009. When I hit the wall, I had a major moral crisis, because that's when they told me to start modifying the records in this system, and I really did not know. I knew spiritually and in my heart what was right. I didn't know how to do it up here, because I had to do it and survive, or I had to find the answer that would allow me to survive. And there were always at least one or two along the way, but the vast majority, and I must say, up including Congress, who I visited 45 times. I also went to the Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General and presented my case to him. And to this day, there has not been one investigation that's been brought up by anybody in Congress. Oddly enough, virtually every story in the book is still going on. None of them have actually been resolved. So I'm technically still a whistleblower. But they're making it easier for me every day, because things like Ben Rhodes and these other issues that come out basically, see, I told you, that's my case. Right there. You just made it for me. Argument's over. Case closed.
So is it like when you first come, oh, thank you. you. When you first, like you get hired on, is there like a signature or something that you're not allowed to share the information? It's like when you're in jury duty, you know, while the court case is going on, you're not allowed to share anything if you're a part of the jury, but afterwards you can open up and tell what happened.
That's the perils of being a whistleblower. As one thing that I told Ted Cruz's crew, I say crew, staff, I went in one day and I was talking to him, and all of a sudden, I said, you know, I learned something from this whole process. And they're all looking at me just like you are now, because I paused on purpose, and I said, what I learned from this whole process is there is no process.
What did they say?
They laughed, just like we did. Because, you know, humor is still legal, so I try to use it whenever I can. But the point is, there is no room 243 where you can go and knock on the door, get an appointment, fill out a couple forms, and please come back in a couple weeks and we'll help you. It doesn't exist. You are at the peril, you're in peril and danger all along the way, because it culminated with the Department of Justice convening a grand jury to find probable cause to indict me and put me in jail. That's how serious they were. While I'm seeing, at exactly the same time when that was all going on, our SF-65, our secret clearance documents, all got hacked. Out of where? Department of Homeland Security. The very same agency I was a part of allowed itself, all the secret material on all the guys like me has been hacked. There's no such thing as security for me. Somebody has it all. And did that even create a ripple on the water? Nope. Went right over, just like it never happened. Now I have free credit check for life, courtesy of American taxpayers.
Philip,
Yes.
it's okay if I can just, I'd sort of like to address the question that she asked about why Philip, because I've been there. I guess we've been there for a while. Don't run off. I've been there long enough to see that the hand of God was on this man. And he was doing this before he ever got into Homeland Security. I mean, he was trained and equipped, strangely enough, in a totally different field that is totally applicable to what he's doing now. God had prepared him every step of the way, and I've watched it happen, that he has led him. I mean, if there is such thing as a male Esther for such a time as this, he is truly an Ezekiel 33 watchman. But he is called and appointed to that role because he has done this on his own time. Understand, when he's testifying before Congress, he did it around his job. He took vacation and went up there. None of the things that he's doing right now had anything to do with his job. They just accused him and said, hey, you're using the material. That's why he does what he does here. Everything he has is open source. Because as he says, Islam has to tell you what they're going to do. And so they do. They publish it. It's all out there. So he simply went and collected it and said, what they're saying is the truth. You hear from Iran, all the things that they're saying? That's because that's what they are going to do. And he collected all of that. So they tried to indict him for using this secret information and so on. But they have yet to ever find anything to indict him on. And I've been there. They've tried very hard to shut him down every way.
He read some of the letters that were so preposterously ridiculous in their language that if you had one too many shots of tequila, you wouldn't still be able to make it up what they wrote, because it's just like, this is like, I tell people it's like living in Alice in Wonderland where the Mad Hatter has a .45. That's what it's like. It's funny, but it's not really funny.
We are always told that the average Muslim is peaceful. It's just the radical Muslim that we are fighting, which is the minority of Muslims. And I think that's why they got so upset when Trump said he wanted to stop the Muslims from coming into our country, because that's not what they want us to believe. They want us to believe it's this small radical group.
What do you think
But
would
out
happen?
of everything that you've shown tonight, if they're a Muslim and they go by the Quran, they're not
They're bound by it.
peaceful.
Can you imagine renouncing John 3:16? It's inconceivable, isn't it? What do you think would happen if Megyn Kelly read, take that one, that verse right there, emphatically, clearly, and precisely read that verse on TV? What do you think would happen? Well, yeah, maybe even that.
9 o'clock spot.
Probably. For what reason?
Because they.
Ratings.
Bye, folks.
Her ratings would go down.
That means fitna is greater than slaughter. See, that's just a secular way of doing it. The fear of ratings going down is greater than the fear of actually preventing attacks.
This isn't a question so much, but just something that is so disturbing. Our son went to he goes to KSU, and he went to a history class. And the first day, the professor brought out select quotes from the Quran. Well, first of all, his world history had started at 600 AD, so they could conveniently start with Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought out quotes from the Quran, which were not those quotes from the Bible, and just made these kids think that there's nothing wrong with Islam. And he did what I thought was interesting the first day of class, so there was no chance for parents like us or anybody else to counter it. And I mean, within one class, actually, we had to work on him for a while once he got calm. He was like, saying we weren't open-minded. I mean, this is a conservative, awesome Christian kid. And in one class, they just about destroyed 20 years of work. It's just so
well,
upsetting.
if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, think about the power of a deception, of an ideology that emphatically insists that the crucifixion never happened.
Yeah.
Think about that. A historical event, just take the spiritual part out of it. It is well known, documented numerous different ways from different sources other than the Bible, but including the Bible, and has been able to insist emphatically that it never happened. You're talking about principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places. Steve saw, well, I can't remember if you were there, when I forgot the name of the school we were at. We had a real life example of it, didn't we? He invited me, or his friend who is a professor, Muslim, at what college?
South Alabama.
Yeah, and we actually went into his class, right? And he let me talk.
Wow.
Big mistake.
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah, and he kept saying that, oh, there was not going to be any overthrow. The Muslim Brotherhood weren't going to try to overthrow Egypt. And I finally came, at the end of the class I said, why don't you invite me back in 1 year and we'll reconvene and we'll talk about what we said here tonight. Still waiting. That was 4 years ago. And the class was just sitting there watching us go back and forth. And I have to believe that that might have been an antidote.
Yeah.
Because it was really quite remarkable, wasn't it?
Wow.
It was.
Philip, do you see the irony of civil rights and civil liberties being used to defend Islam?
Because they don't believe in the same definition of civil rights and civil liberties that we do.
They have to see what's going on in the other countries.
They do.
And it's so violent. How can they want to bring it here? That's what they're doing. They want to destroy America.
Because that is what they believe, meaning it's a powerful belief system. It's not just belief or faith, it's also social, legal. Every aspect of your life is surrounded by it. There's no option. There's no quiet space from it. It's everything. You know how many times, what foot you're supposed to go through the bathroom to enter the bathroom with? You will if you follow Sharia. Do you know how many times you're supposed to do personal hygiene? Down to the number? You will if you know Sharia. How about in your married life? How would you like to have a system of rules and regulations of cans and cannot do's posted right up there, looking over your shoulder like Big Brother? You will if you follow Sharia.
Okay. Go ahead, Greg, and then we'll finish up here.
I come from a military family. You remember the 2009 Fort Hood shooting? Hassan, Nadal Hassan, I think was his name. He was a United States major. I know everybody in my family's had to go through security clearances. I was secret, my son is secret. And I'm sure that an officer had to have a similar security clearance. You, as being part of Homeland Security, had to go through that. You know how intensive that was. They went back 3 generations. My question is how can somebody with this kind of ties to the Islamic community and kill these innocent soldiers right in our own military base
Not
do
only
this
that,
with that kind of clearance?
He told his colleagues through PowerPoint presentations multiple times exactly what he believed and what he intended to do. Not specifically on that day, but laid the groundwork for it. And there were officers that were concerned about it, and it was brushed under the carpet. This was all going on at the same time that they were deleting information out of the system from me. Yeah, it's like, as I said, it permeated its way through all of the, I'll call it law enforcement, including military, because it's a form of law enforcement, across the whole government, like toxic gas. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.